Welcome to After the Download, the podcast that explores how people really use apps and other digital platforms, and what that means for the businesses that own and build them. Hosted by RealityMind. On this podcast, we talk to product leaders, data scientists, editors, and journalists to uncover emerging trends, discuss best practices, and dive deep into the data behind everyday digital behavior that you need to win in today's competitive digital marketplace. And now, your host, RealityMind CEO, Chris Haveman.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I talk to Rohan Jacob, founder and CEO of Nokio, a brilliant app designed to solve the problem we all have these days of constantly surfing to find what to watch. Rohan's goal with this app was to help us sort through the clutter of multiple online reviews and AI recommendations. Jacob has created an app that delivers ratings, reviews, and recommendations from your close group of family and friends. During our discussion, we talk about the vision behind Nokio, its positioning as an aggregator rather than a content platform, and the importance of user engagement metrics. Rohan also highlights the diversity of content on Nokio, the role of AI in enhancing user experience, and his aspirations for the platform's future as a distribution channel for independent films and shows. So let's get started. Here's my conversation with Rohan Jacob. Okay, so today I'm delighted to be joined on the podcast by Rohan Jacob. Rohan is the founder and CEO of Nokio. Rohan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
It's really fun to have a true entrepreneur on the show. And so I thought I'd kick off by asking you about your entrepreneurial journey. I know you worked in media, but maybe you can just tell us the story of how you found your way to doing a startup and how that's going.
Sure. So I come from a non-technical background, so did not expect to be a founder of a technical platform like Nokio. So hardcore production, television operations back in India for some of the top networks. Was in the US, and I think we were all stuck at home during the pandemic in 2020, and the need to want to have a platform for myself, I think it stemmed from there to as a pipe dream. So that was the journey for Nokio, and here we are.
So Rohan, I guess the question on everyone's lips is, tell us a little bit about Nokio.
So I think I'll answer the elephant in the room. What does Nokio mean? Nokio actually means, in my native language, in Malayalam, have you seen? I think it started from there where I wanted to have a word that would be a verb. So Nokio in Malayalam means have you seen? And it felt appropriate with this. I think the germ of the idea, like I was saying earlier, Nokio stemmed from the need for a personal space for myself. And many of my friends who I interact with and share recommendations, and most of these used to happen on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and Instagram, and it's just all over the place. And it never just ties down to one space and gets lost in the clutter. And then you're like, hey, where is that title that you sent? What platform is it on? And you're scrounging for the content. And so it was basically to have everything in one space. So that was Nokio. So yeah, more like a diary of sorts. Where you can look back and sometimes I look back and like, man, I saw so many movies this year. I didn't know that.
The Nokio app, I guess it's trying, as a startup, you're trying to find a place between, as you said, social media and people's WhatsApp groups or Instagram, massive giants like Netflix and YouTube. How did you think about, carving out a space, finding a proposition that was sort of unique and differentiated? What was your journey and how did you think about that?
So one thing is that we are not a content platform. We are an aggregator layer to platforms like Netflix or YouTube or Prime Video or the inane number of platforms that are out there. But initially, we were positioning Nokio as a social review platform where users would come in, add their reviews and share what they've seen. But somewhere along the line and earlier this year, we pivoted from a social review platform to a social discovery platform. Because I think the larger user base of the people out there are more interested to discover what to watch than necessarily putting their opinion out there. I think that comes as a secondary layer of the discovery. When you really like something or you really don't like something, then you want to go and register your opinion. But the larger user base just wants to discover, hey, what's out there, what's new. And every week we have at least 50 to 60 titles coming out that are big titles, and I'm not even talking about the smaller titles. So choice paradox is huge. But coming back to platforms like Netflix and YouTube, we would be the platform that you would open before opening Netflix and YouTube. So we're definitely not competing with them. I think Netflix and YouTube is more in the engagement and retention. We are more in the, I would say, utility and discovery space. So our primary objective is not to keep you hooked or engaged onto Nokia. I think most social media platforms, that is the aim. To how long can I keep the user on my platform? And our USP is to have the user come, discover what to watch in 60 seconds and leave. That would be the success. That would be
Which is very unusual.
Yeah. I think the decision where you spend 2 to 3 hours for a movie or 10 hours for a series, if that is made on Nokia, that's our USP.
Your aim is they really start their viewing, watching journeys when they're not going back to something that, their loyalty, for example. They think of you as the place to go to start that viewing journey.
Yeah, because I think today you can have a hardware like a Chrome Stick or an Apple TV, or your smart TV itself can give you an interface, but that experience is not super personalized to you, and definitely does not account for a social layer of the people who you are connected to. And not just people you're connected to, Chris. For all it's worth, social media today is you are following strangers whose content you like, right? You might see a comedian's reel or a political analyst's content, and you're like, hey, I like this person's voice, I like this person's narrative, and I'm going to follow them. And that's exactly what we are seeing on Nokia, where random strangers find other people whose voices they like. And that could be a 20-year-old kid or a 40-year-old mom, and be like, hey, I like, because they're not motivated or their reviews are not motivated by anything. It is what it is, genuine reactions. So yeah, I think that's what people are finding unique to Nokia.
And I think, am I right in thinking Nokia, your user base is essentially in India?
For all technical purposes, we are registered in the US. So we are a US company. But we're starting off India as phase one, purely because I've grown up there, I worked there. I've done a lot of travel there across different states and cities. I'd like to say I have a pulse on the audience at a grassroots level to know what is it that an audience person is looking for. And I think as a platform, we generally, I myself as a user tend to see this, that the platform tends to have more control on the platform than the user themselves. I think our aim is to give as much control to the user to be able to decide what to watch. And so from that point of view, India, I think today is the most unique country where the number of languages consumed, apart from the Indian regional languages, English, Korean, Italian, Turkish, it's insane. The amount and anime. Anime is huge in India. So I think India is just that perfect spot, and India and Indians globally. And I think that's what we are seeing today. Although we have targeted India, we are in over 150 countries, in over 3,000 cities. And that's happened organically for us.
And is that the sort of social discovery, social connection, member get member kind of expansion? How do people find out about Nokia?
I think today we have hardly spent anything on marketing. It's been mostly organic. We've done 1 or 2 influencer-led campaigns with people who are on Nokia itself. But it's mostly been member-to-member, word of mouth. And I think that's the beauty of, I think what they say, a genuine viral product. When you find something useful, you'd like to share it with your friends and get those brownie points. I think that's what we're seeing. As
you run your business, everyone wants to talk about metrics. I'd be really interested to know what metrics you kind of track week to week, month to month. What's important to you on the dashboard?
I think like every platform, user growth is definitely one. We are still a very, 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 very small platform compared to the behemoths out there. But I think the metrics that I see and that gives me hope today is when users come back. There was this time in India in October, it was the week before Diwali, and our numbers just plummeted the few days before. And I was like, man, this bubble has burst. And then the Diwali weekend holiday came and we saw numbers surge to the highest ever. And it was a very different pattern. And that made me realize that it's okay for people not to use the app. That does not mean that they have forgotten. And I think that's where the fact that we are not a daily engagement app for the people who are using it, not using it every day, right? You don't necessarily travel every day. You go to a travel platform when you need to. You use a food delivery service when you need to. Same way, I think with Nokia also, it's when you decide to watch something, you use Nokia. So it's not like an Instagram or a Twitter that you need to open every day. And what we're seeing with users is somebody could come back after a week, somebody could come back after a month, but the fact that you come back to Nokia when you decide to watch, I think that's the most important thing for us today.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need to go to Instagram every day. I didn't actually realize that. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
Well, I'm somebody who was not on Instagram and came onto Instagram when I founded Nokia purely to push the platform. But I think I'm one of those people who would happily be off of Instagram because I don't, at the end of a scroll session, I feel like I've not gained anything.
So just talking about your user base, and I'd be interested to know like just how you'd kind of characterize your users and any particular surprises along the way as you've got to know your user base. Is there anything surprising that you've learned about them?
I'm learning every day. In fact, just yesterday I was talking to one of our power users who's been on the platform since 23. And he was saying how he likes to use the platform because he's got a set of followers and he's able to send those direct peer-to-peer recommendations. And I think that's something that's unique to us, that apart from a user dropping a review, you can send a direct peer-to-peer recommendation individually. And so it's compared to other platforms, again, I'm just taking the example of Instagram or Facebook, where if I dropped something, you expect your friends or followers to come and discover that content through a lot of other clutter. Whereas on Nokia, we have structured it in such a way that you're spoon feeding your user. So you're not necessarily needing to go out and discover the content, but it's already spoon fed to you in your your DM, where you can see it amongst with other messages in a collated way for a particular movie. So I think, but coming back to your question about our users, I think it ranges from the everyday cinephile who wants to watch something every day to the average casual weekend watcher. I think we have people who are, let's say, everyday cinephiles who watch a lot of content every day, track trailers. I'd like to say we're the best space and coolest space today to check out trailers. YouTube, I myself used to check out a lot of trailers on YouTube, but YouTube has become a cluster space where between the fake trailers and the AI trailers, you don't know what's real out there. That, and then you could be somebody who just wants to watch something casually on the weekend and not spend too much time. So it ranges from the everyday user to somebody who wants to watch on the weekend. But also, just to deep dive into the user, if you're interested to know, Chris, is I think we're breaking our users into the 1-9-90% category, where the 1% are your creators, critics, influencers, whose job it is to produce content in this space, maybe reviews, recommendations. Then comes the 9% who very aggressively follow these users, comment on Instagram, comment on YouTube, engage with that content. And then comes the 90% that hardly ever goes to YouTube or Instagram to watch a trailer or watch a review, but they still watch movies. Where do they get their information from? And I think that's the kind of positioning we are doing for Nokia, where at the end of the day, that 90% is a huge untapped market that we're going after. And that could be from the 9%. So in essence, trying to create a whole new set of community voices in this space that is connected to the 90%. So yeah.
So Rohan, and when you think about the kind of content, you mentioned trailers, so I'm thinking about obviously movies. I'm assuming a lot of the content your users are reviewing is also, or commenting on, is also TV. How far does that extend? Obviously there are trends in the industry towards creators and so on, and obviously AI generated content. How far does Nokia go towards that sort of social influencer content, or are you very much at the kind of high quality scripted And do you cover even, I don't know, sports or other genres?
So when you say sports, are you talking about live sports or?
What could be Drive to Survive on Netflix. I mean,
Got it. So when you're talking about sports docus or sports movies, then it's everything, right? And not just movies and series, but even short films. I think on the platform we have a few small independent short filmmakers who put their movies out and share it. And again, the platform is just structured so easily where an independent filmmaker can upload their YouTube short film onto Nokia, where their friends can then see it and then comment on it, review it. And so that's a lot of validation, right? On a 5-minute or a 10-minute short film. I think the idea with Nokia is to create a level playing field. Doesn't matter if you're an F1 or a Mission Impossible with millions of marketing dollars, or you're an independent short film maker who's made a 5-minute or a 10-minute short film. But the ability to discover both on the same platform, I think that's what we're trying to do. And because otherwise it's not a level playing field for the creators.
And how much do you have to think about content moderation on the platform? You know, curation, safety, guardrails, this kind of territory, or is it very much an open platform?
It is an open platform today, and I think there are guardrails for each user. So, for example, the rating that you see on Nokia is unique to each user. Unlike, let's say, an IMDb or a Rotten Tomatoes that shows you one global average rating, which can get skewed. And we see a lot of review bombing happening on an IMDb, where I sometimes see a movie, an Indian movie on IMDb that has a 9+ rating. And sometimes that's higher than The Godfather. I'm like, wow, that's not possible. But I think the uniqueness of Nokia with regard to the rating is the fact that it's unique to each user, makes it non-spammable, or you can't bot it or spam it. And with regard to moderation, I don't think we want to get into content moderation for each user. I think the idea is to serve, for a lack of better words, a food analogy is to give you a thali or a bento box instead of a buffet, so that it's personalized to you, and you get to pick from that. So yeah.
I guess 2025 was the year of AI maybe, and I think 2026 is going to be another year of AI. So I've got to ask you the inevitable AI question. How is AI changing your world, whether it's how you run your business or the trends amongst your users, or even in the content world? What are the big AI impacts on the Nokia ecosystem?
I think anybody would say, oh, I can use AI to give me something to watch, maybe use ChatGPT or Google Gemini, but all of those need a starting point. It still needs to understand, what does Chris like? What is Chris in the mood for today? It's just going to give you 10 random options, but you still need to teach the AI and personalize it to you. And we're already doing that with Nokia for each user. So I think AI with Nokia would be to reduce the noise, then give you more content, to curate it. For me, AI would be a tool than a feature. I think, at least as a platform for us, AI is a tool that would help make a better choice for you than throw you with 10, 20 options and put you down a rabbit hole that everybody's doing. So yeah.
Obviously, you talked about India, and you're from India. You know the country well. You worked in, I think, TV production in India, so you understand that market. You understand the Indian viewer, consumer, and so on. But you've been in the States for quite a few years now. I think nearly 10 years. So it must have occurred to you, the United States is the big mother prize. Should I not just go straight for the United States market? Did you think about that, or you were very clear that would be a bad idea?
Think about that, but I think as a startup, it's where you start, right? I think I could grow more organically in India. US is definitely the revenue space. Like, just throwing numbers, the average Indian household spends 3,000 to 5,000 rupees. So that's divided by 88, around $56 annually on streaming subscription. Whereas in the US, that's anywhere between 300 to 500 annually.
Right. So it's nearly 10x.
So, yeah. So there's a lot of revenue, you cannot compare. Like even if you look at the Hollywood numbers, right? What a movie makes in the US domestically, obviously I'm not counting China, but China aside, US is the biggest market globally for movies and shows and entertainment. You cannot beat that. So yeah, but my ROI would have been much, much higher going into the US. I think if I was a student and I had a student network, it would have been much easier, similar to what a Facebook did. I did, in fact, speak to somebody 2 days back at Harvard Business School, and they were part of the media club. And so tapping into communities like that who are part of media clubs in schools and colleges would be one way to go for us.
Okay. So a necessary seed of the business model was to have your Indian network that allowed you to get the ball rolling. That was kind of critical to the early success of even getting off the ground, I guess.
Yeah, as in India, I could and I can access top actors and directors. In US, for the life of me, I wouldn't get a face-to-face with a Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino.
Tom Cruise wasn't returning your calls.
No, but in India, I have access because of the network. So if I landed there, I could, in a month to 3 months' time, get big people. As in, that did it for India for Twitter. When Amitabh Bachchan and Rajnikant, these are two big names, that when they came onto Twitter, Twitter blew. It became like, oh, everybody needs to be on Twitter now, kind of a thing. So yeah.
This is my last question. As we look at the growth of your business over the next 2 or 3 years, where do you hope to go? What trends are you really trying to leverage? What's your kind of vision for how things are going to play over the next 2-3 years?
The larger vision, and again, I could be laughed at, but I guess that's where we're small and dreaming big, is to become from a discovery platform to a distribution platform. So eventually, where the user not only discovers, but is also able to consume the content on an Okio. And I know your question might be like, oh, Netflix is never going to allow that. But Netflix is the Mount Everest of content in this space. But we could start off with smaller channels, with free content, with other channels, but the ability to be able to showcase that content on an Okio, which makes it easier for the platform and the user. And I think we can create a win-win situation for everybody. So yeah, to eventually become a distribution platform. But not just distribution in the streaming space, distribution for a lot of content that is not able to find a platform out there. Today, the Netflixes and the Primes or any platform still requires a certain amount of, is this a movie worth licensing? And then they have to shell out X amount of money for that movie's license. That leaves a lot of independent movies not getting a distribution platform itself. So I think our aim would be to try to create a space where those movies are distributed. Just yesterday, like I was telling, I was talking to this user and he was talking to me about this Indonesian movie called Sore, A Wife from the Future, and I had not heard about the movie, and I think that's the thing with Nokia, to be able to find such a movie and be like, okay, I'll add it to my watch list and watch it, and he was saying that this movie doesn't have the marketing budgets, although they're being selected at the Oscar foreign film section. They might not make it to the top 5 because they're very small, but that doesn't take away the fact that I want to watch that movie. Or I might watch it and tell 10 of my friends that, hey, you should watch it. So I think that's what we are going to hope, that to rely on the audience that we eventually manifest into, to be able to tell people, because nothing beats word of mouth recommendation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I could go off on a big tangent about finding tradespeople for your home, but I think the evidence still shows that a word of mouth recommendation to find a plumber is favored to many, digital solutions. So, but that's kind of a 20th century view of it.
The word of mouth recommendation thing is very funny. I have a lot of movies on my watch list, and sometimes they are lying there, and I don't have the motivation. But then when I see 2 or 3 friends see it, I'm like, hey, it motivates me to be like, now I know value for time and money, right? I think a lot of times, and today we talk about, people rewatch Friends, people rewatch The Big Bang Theory. I just watch a repeat episode of Seinfeld. I think what we all are looking for is that dopamine hit, right? It's that guaranteed emotion that I know if I watch this, I'm going to get a certain emotion. But through a word of mouth recommendation, if I can guarantee you that, hey, you will get that same emotion when you watch this, then I know it and I'm going in. So at the end of the day, it's about serving a certain emotion and getting that emotion. And that's where we're scared about, right? Am I going to invest the next half an hour or 1 hour in a movie and be left high and dry without getting that emotion? And I think that's where rewatches work. And we're scared to discover new content because we're not sure of the emotion is going to deliver for us. But if somebody has tried and tested that for us, then we are more akin to trying that new movie or new show about.
It's a really interesting point because as you've been talking, I was thinking about personalization. So Netflix tries to work out what I should watch next on Netflix. You know, Apple TV is doing aggregation, so it's trying to become the gateway to all these different, for example, streaming providers. But there is something missing from either of those, which is what's really compelling that I should watch from someone that kind of knows me and is willing to go out on a limb with a recommendation. And it could be on any platform. It could be on YouTube. And so I can see there is a gap there that Nokia is trying to fill. That's really, really interesting.
I think there's the flip side of giving so you spoke about getting the recommendation. There's a flip side of giving a recommendation also, Chris, where the person who gives the recommendation is like, yes, they also feel a certain sense of accomplishment when you find the sense of pride. So I think we're seeing that flip side also, and that's where there's the giving a recommendation and getting a recommendation, and I think that's how it works. So yeah.
I think there are two types of people, those that prefer giving holiday gifts and those that prefer receiving them. And my wife is definitely in the former. Okay. I guess we've probably taken...
Yeah, the joy in both.
Rohan, really, really fascinating to learn about Nokia and your journey. And goes without saying, we wish you all the best from Reality Mind as you kind of stride into the new Vista and hopefully achieve that vision for Nokia. We look forward to staying in touch and watching your success over the coming years.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Chris.
you for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of After the Download. If you found today's insights valuable, subscribe to stay ahead of the curve at the intersection of technology, data, and consumer behavior. Please take a moment to share, rate, and review, helping us grow this exciting new thought leadership channel. And keep joining us as we connect you to world-class product and brand strategists, data experts, and key observers of the digital space. We also welcome your feedback. Feel free to send us your ideas and observations at atdownload@realitymind.com. That's @download@realitymind.com. Thanks, and see you next time.